A reading from Inside the Yoga Sutras by Reverend Jagannath Carrera. Sutra 1.15. Non-attachment is a manifestation of self-mastery in one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about. Non-attachment, vairagya, literally means without color. It is the ability to keep the distortions of selfish motives and intents out of every relationship, action, and process of learning. Selfish desires are the typical motivating forces of the mind, pulling it toward hope for pleasure or away from the dread of pain. However, for those interested in self-realization, selfish desires are not the appropriate mode of functioning since they are based on relieving the discomfort of craving and not on what is physically, mentally, social, or spiritually beneficial. Seekers are called on to cultivate a different foundation for their actions, non-attachment. Non-attachment emerges when the mind voluntarily changes its underlying motivations from selfish to selfless, from seeking sense satisfaction to seeking an experience of peace that transcends external circumstances. Selfish desires gradually release the mind from the sway of sense-motivated activity and open it to the powerful influences of the Purusha. Relating non-attachment to self-mastery might lead us to confuse it with fanatical exercises in repression and self-deprivation. That path often leads to failure and an unbalanced view of the world as a dangerous and evil place. Instead, the self-mastery that expresses as non-attachment is a process of re-educating the mind through 1. The careful observation of the limitations of sense satisfaction. It is the cultivation of realistic, healthy relationships with objects and attainments based on understanding what the world can give and cannot offer. 2. Assessing life's experiences in regard to their ability to decrease or increase ignorance. 3. The effort to live according to principles that foster spiritual growth rather than what feels good at the moment. 4. Cultivating an inner awareness, an introspective mindset that is aware of the motives for action. 5. The redirection of the will when making choices, not by repression of desires, but by directing the attention away from selfish actions and towards those that are selfless. But these explanations are probably not enough to inspire a confident, enthusiastic practice. It is hard to drop the feeling that non-attachment is somehow unnatural, that it rejects human emotions and promotes a dour view of life. That is where success in non-attachment requires a deep understanding of the nature of attachments and why we are being asked to avoid them. Attachments are attractions we feel toward objects or people that we believe have brought us pleasure. Sutra 2.7. Aversion, the feeling of repulsion for objects or events that we believe bring discomfort, is attachment in reverse. Sutra 2.8. As seekers, we sometimes find ourselves caught in a contradiction. We believe that it is unreasonable to expect the world to provide permanent fulfillment. Meanwhile, even as we strive to express or to experience the unbounded peace that is our true identity, We cling to a list of things we think we need to be happy. The contradiction occurs because we habitually attribute the power to confer happiness onto objects and attainments. We catch a whiff of a warm apple pie. Immediately, without any apparent thought, a craving develops. Craving, never a comfortable state, nudges us into action. We expend the time, energy, and funds necessary to get some nice apple pie. After enjoying a slice, a thought arises. It seems harmless, yet it exemplifies a way of thinking that leads to suffering. That made me happy. Our beliefs seem to have switched from happiness is my true nature to I can't be happy without apple pie. What happened? We expended effort to get the pie, driven by the discomfort of the craving and the anticipation of experiencing pleasure from satisfying that craving. After eating the pie, we felt a release and mistaken it for happiness, attributed our happiness to the pie. Actually, we just returned to the state we were in before the craving took hold on the mind, albeit with more calories and sugar in our bloodstream. This is not to say that apple pie is bad or good. It is neutral. Things in nature are neutral. It is our approach that determines whether sense objects are experienced as sources of pain or pleasure. As my master often said, electricity is good when you plug in a radio, but bad when you plug in your finger. If we are interested in knowing the true nature of electricity, the mind must be kept in neutral. To maintain a clear, balanced mind, to perceive things as they are without bias, and to act without prejudging constitutes the core of non-attachment. Your own experience with transitory sense pleasures would tell you that they are often mingled with guilt or the pain of seeing them slowly vanish. Rarely, if ever, are we perfectly satisfied. Most often, we are left wanting a little more or better food, movies, shoes, money, or relationship. This lack of self-satisfaction is inherent in the mistaken notion that something outside us can make us happy. The more we rely on the outside world for happiness, the more we experience dissatisfaction and craving. We forget that an undisturbed state of mind reflects the essence of our being, the self, which is happiness itself. The paradox is that the only way not to experience perfect happiness is to be seeking it outside the self. One might wonder, does a practice of non-attachment require staying away from things we love? Those things that bring enjoyment? Isn't it natural, even good, to want a meaningful job or a loving partner? Aren't they at least exceptions to this principle? Didn't God create the universe for us to appreciate? Non-attachment is not a negotiation of the world, but the cultivation of the appropriate relationship to the transitory pleasure and pains of the world. It isn't sense objects that cause grief, but our inappropriate relationship to them based on unrealistic, often selfish expectations.